So hello everybody and welcome to today's Kinderly Learn webinar on working together, parent partnerships and early home learning. My name is Tracy, I'm your host again for the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you're all well and keeping safe in these difficult times. But I'd like to start today by welcoming Ali McClure. Sorry Ali, I got that as a tongue twister.
Hello.
Hi there.
Good morning, welcome.
It's lovely to have you with us. Ali's an experienced education and parenting consultant who specialises in the early years and special needs. She's at Asenco, she's an author. You may have heard of her book on making it better for boys. And Ali also runs training courses for parents on how to support home learning and brilliant behaviour. So again, that's great to have you with us today, Ali.
It's lovely to be with you as well. Thank you, Tracy. My courses are not just for parents, they're also for professionals. So there's a whole range of courses. And with this new situation, then, you know, at the moment, they're all online. So that's fantastic.
Oh, that is good. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so as usual, before we start, I'm just going to run through the format of the webinar, just for those who are new joining us today. You'll notice that you're on mute. This helps us to keep sound interference and any unexpected noises to a minimum. We do want to hear from you. We're slightly changing the format of the webinar today. We're going to have a question and answers type of format. So I'm going to be posing various questions to Ali and Ali's going to be giving her answers. So it's a great opportunity for you as well to ask your own questions. And you can do this as usual by using the chat button, which is the speech bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. If you can't see it, hover over it and hopefully it will appear up. If you click on the speech bubble, you can then type in your questions or ideas, any comments you'd like to make. And importantly though, if you can remember to select the option to send to all panelists and attendees, and that way everybody can see what you're what you're sending and can share in your message. And very importantly, just to say, you will all be receiving a certificate for attending today. This will be emailed to you by the end of Thursday, by the end of tomorrow, and it will also include a link to Ali's current training offer on brilliant behaviour and limitless learning. Gosh, I'm struggling with my L's today. Okay, so I hope that's okay, everybody. We're going to start now. And the first question that I'm going to pose today is a very basic one, and that is, why are parent partnerships important, Ali?
Goodness me. Parent partnerships have always been important, but never more so at this time. You know, if we've had conversations with our parents, whether we've got the children in front of us or whether they're at home, it's just brought it home that we are, you know, a symbiosis of our settings and our parents. And if we haven't been connecting with them to that extent before, I think we certainly will be afterwards. So you asked why are they important? It's just so crucial in anything for children to be given the same messages. So the same messages from home and from the school or the setting, to have a love of learning. And if your learning is just in a box that happens when you go to your nursery or to your early years setting, and then it seemed to stop at home, it's not a love of learning that goes across. It's really important that all parents are involved. And we know that families look very different. We've got people from all over the world here today. Families look different in different places, and getting mum, dad, carer, elder brother, sister, granny, granddad, all of those people involved, and just having that spark of learning from little ones. The other things that are really important is that in these early years, we know that children are absolutely ripe for learning. And we certainly don't need to cram. I'm not into force feeding and encouraging them to, you know, do lots and lots of phonics and writing and all of that, unless, of course, they're ready for it. However, we do need them to be embracing learning across the board. And I know something we're going to come to towards the end, Tracy, is about language. Language is a really important aspect of this. And we've got children who come to us with a whole range of different skills in language. it's really important that we empower those parents.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Ali. So how can we encourage parents to start off with this to support home learning? Obviously, over the last couple of months, parents have been much more involved in supporting their own children's learning. How can we build on that now and encourage parents to continue once we start to move out of lockdown?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for parents to know that there's learning in everything that they do. So if they are cooking, we know there's learning in that. When we're able to go out shopping, there's learning in that. And just giving them some tips and hints as to how they can talk to their children. You know, how many, how few. A lot of it is about the questioning. The other thing that I like to do is to start off with one thing. So start off with one particular thing that they will have at home. I'm just wondering if any of the listeners today have started from one particular thing when they're sparking learning. It would be interesting to hear back from some of the listeners today as to whether that's the case.
Yeah, that's great. If anybody wants to type into chat anything about that, please do, and I'll try and feed that back to Ali.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And while we're waiting for a few of those, I'll share one that I've started with. In this interesting time, I've also, part of my work is with an infant school. I'm a Senko at an infant school, and I was asked to take on some of the home learning for the reception class at that time. So it's one thing, having children of, 2 to 5, even younger, with you in your setting, and you can use all of the equipment that you've got around. Your continuous provision makes a real difference. But actually, if you've got to plant those seeds at home, that's something that is quite a craft, and we need to be able to empower parents in that way.
Okay, so actually, Christine has asked, can you rephrase the question again, Ali? I'm not sure everybody caught the question that you were posing to them.
Is that how to encourage parents to support learning at home? Well, it's our job as practitioners to empower the parents. So what do we do to empower the parents to help the children to learn? I hope that answers Christine's question.
But what do we do to empower parents? I think people are hoping we'd explore that. So
yeah, no, exactly. We will explore that. Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
This is what I started with our reception class. It was an orange. I'm sort of getting, the fact that most parents will be able to access an orange, and they certainly did. What questions could we ask if we have an orange? Well, we could start off with the colour, and we could send children on a scavenger hunt around the house to find different things of different colours. And then a lot of that is empowering the parents to be able to talk to the children about those things that they found. They could, if you look at a range of areas of the curriculum, life isn't about areas of the curriculum. Oh, we've got somebody up here, we send a colour scavenger hunt. That's absolutely fantastic. And actually, when I sent them off, hang on, we've got some more coming up. We send pictures of a mud kitchen and a bowl for potion making. And this was also for I don't get to see the end of that.
For children to see a resource they recognise.
Yeah. Oh, we've got so many ideas coming in. Tell me, Tracy, can everybody else see these comments coming up as well?
So if everybody chooses the option, when in the to box, if you choose all panelists and attendees, that means everybody can see the messages that you're typing. So if I can please ask everybody to make sure they're trying to do that, that would be great. Yeah. So.
Now, there are some lovely suggestions coming through there. I'm going to continue with what we did with
Do you want me to just read them out? Or are you okay to carry on?
No, you could read a few of them out.
Okay, so yes, some people have used fruit and veg to teach children about their colours. Yep. So one person sent a bundle of books home for a child who had no interest in books. But the parents could share them with them. The response was amazing. He now loves books.
Yeah, can I press pause on there?
Of course.
That's a really useful one. If the parents and children are at home and they may not have access to things, we can send resources home to them if we're able to source that, which will then help to empower their learning.
Yeah.
If they have a whiteboard and a pen, some cubes to count with, some counters, a pair of kiddie scissors. You know, we presume that parents have got these things at home, but maybe they don't have. Yeah.
A lot of people are sharing books from setting to home, creating home learning packs and a book each week.
Yeah.
There is a slightly different one. Hold on then. Yes, somebody is sending parents different targets each week. This week we're working on target 1, which is independence, and we suggest 3 simple activities to encourage the children at home, which sounds brilliant.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, because that links me back to where I was going with starting with an orange.
Okay.
It wasn't a completely random idea. I wanted to reinforce circles with my children. And there was method in my madness, because circles are very much the basis of letter formation. So I was wanting to check out that these children had got the right letter formation. And those are very often circular shapes. So I started with an orange, which might seem a little bit weird for letter formation. But what we did then, they looked at the colour, they looked at how they could use an orange, and every week we did a cooking at the end of the week and encouraged them to think of what they could cook with an orange at the end of the week. But I also asked them to cut the orange in half, obviously with parental help, scoop out the middle, make some holes in the top, and then, again, this empowering thing, I have deliberately used scrap paper, and then use the orange to print. And we printed with chocolate powder. And what that does is that really helps children to see that this orange is a ball shape, and depending on what age your children are, you might use the technical language as well. You might say it is a sphere, and you might reinforce that language. And then before you go on to this, you could go off around the house looking for other spheres. Yeah? And obviously that leads on to working with a ball. And as we all know, the physical development of a child is so, so important. So including those physical activities in there, encouraging parents to see what games they play with things that are spheres. And I'm going to come back to that later when we talk about all age learning. Yeah? We went on to print, and it showed that from a sphere, it has a circle shape. So for me, something that's really important is that depth of learning, knowing that that's a sphere, but when you cut it and print with it, it makes a circle shape. And then you can go on to all sorts of different learning with circles. And the parents and the children really flew with it. They went off and they found circles all around the house. They found plug holes. They found knobs and dials. And in going off in different directions, it's a bit like in the moment planning, but happening in people's homes.
How much direction do you give them, Ali, to try and, you know, it's as you say, it's in the moment planning, which even early years practitioners maybe have a little scared of. So how do you direct parents to have the confidence to keep going with wherever the child is leading them?
Yeah, and that's something that's quite hard for parents, because they have become quite reliant on worksheets and finite tasks. You know, find me 6 things around the house that are circle shape. And then it's done. And then it's on board. What do I do next? It's about working with the parents when you have got them back in your setting, actually letting them see how that learning evolves, and sharing those ideas with parents when they are coming into our settings in the real world again, when they're coming in to drop off their children. If you have displays in your entrance that show them all of these different things, where the learning has gone. We started with an orange, but actually the learning with the children I'm working with has now gone on into looking at clocks, because a clock is a circle shape. and we've actually gone on to using hands and gloves and things to work out 5, 10, 15, 20 around a clock. Your question, coming back to it, was how much sort of input do we give to them?
Yeah.
And that I have found to be quite different with supporting parents online, because they don't have that feedback from you. They may have feedback through Tapestry or whatever online, but they don't get that reinforcement that the children, when they're using their continuous provision, they're in the moment planning in school, and they go off at tangents that the teacher says, oh yes, that's great. And you get to share at the end of the day, oh, they went off in this direction. And, you know, it's fantastic to sort of branch off. But when they're at home, they need a little bit more reassurance and perhaps a little bit more guidance. So that's where us as practitioners, we need to know some starting points.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to share some of those. Let's go back and have a little look and see what people are saying. And
yeah, absolutely.
Starting points.
Well, it's quite tricky, Ali, because we've had so many great comments. I think one thing to say is that a theme that has come through is really reassuring parents and you know, telling them what they're doing, acknowledging what a great job they're doing already, you know. And as some people, Rachel has said, you know, oh, I'm only using balloons. And they're like, well, balloons are fantastic. You know, that's a great starting point. So absolutely. I think it's, as you say, it's very much about empowering them and giving them the confidence that what they are doing already is really good. So,
yeah. Well, let's take the balloons thought. If you've got a parent who's using balloons, have a look and see what they're using balloons for. But this is thinking off the top of my head, because in a setting, this is one of the bonuses, in a setting I can't use balloons because they're latex.
No, of course, yes.
But when they're at home, we trust the parents to be choosing the right materials that work for their children.
Yeah.
So if they're choosing balloons, you can put little messages in balloons and then pop, that depends if you're popping them or keeping them. If you work through, I've got the 2 levels of sort of checklist, how to support with that learning. And it will be familiar to lots of practitioners. I sort of struggle with not being able to see people's faces, but if I had 250 people's faces, that might be quite a lot. You know, knowing how I'm connecting with people's faces there. So when you hear these suggestions, I think there's going to be some nods as if say, yeah, of course we do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bit like the early years foundation stage, but I'm aware that not everybody out there uses that. And we know that that is in a state of flux. That's going to change. So our practice should be based on the very best practice rather than just on the early years foundation stage. So the first 4 on my checklist are move and groove. So that's PE and dance and music. And I love those creative aspects. So what PE could you do with balloons? Well, one of them is to get a balloon, and if you have got a badminton racket, great. If not, a fly swat. If not, your hand. And actually batting a ball over a washing line. They are such simple resources, because you have to think, would a parent have that? And if they don't have that, what can they use instead? So, you know, batting a balloon across, having a large sheet. And if you've got more than one child, or the parent can do it with them, then using it a bit like a parachute games, and bouncing the balloon across as well. There are lots of things that you could do with sorting balloons into different colours. Yeah, maybe different sizes. What else?
Yeah.
So, move and groove. Sorry, you've got some more questions I can see.
No, lots of comments really, rather than questions.
Oh, we've got water beads in the balloons.
Water beads in the balloons, messages in the balloons. Chasing a balloon as it deflates is great for space awareness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think Rachel said, but I'm trying to find it now because they're coming through so quick and fast. Squishing the balloons, chasing them, trying to catch them. In fact, we blew up balloons for VE Day, and the fun it produced.
Yeah,
I just couldn't believe. I said we should do this every day, really. You know.
absolutely. Depending on how hot it is, filling balloons with water. To a certain extent. And if you just put a little in, then they move quite differently, which is quite fun. And also, if you freeze balloons, you can freeze things inside the balloon and pop it. And then, yeah, there are all sorts of things you can do there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on to the next one, which is count and measure, which is obviously maths. There's all sorts of things you can do with maths rather than count and measure. But, you know, how big is the balloon getting? So you blow it up and you predict how big it's going to get. You know, how many balloons have you got? Hang them off the washing line. Somebody says that the one that little boys often do, pinching the entrance to the balloon and letting the noise out. So once you've got a starting point, then as it's happening, the ideas come thick and fast. And that's one of the fantastic things about this limitless learning approach within your setting. Even if we weren't giving out information to the parents at the moment, it includes everybody. In my work with my reception class, I've got a TA. I know her from when I'm Senko back at school. She's not able to be connecting with the children, but she's absolutely part of my team. In fact, I'm meeting with her online after this, and we're planning what we're going to do next. And she contributes, and she has got ideas. I'm seeing from Angela here, chasing bubbles. So balloons then evolves into bubbles. You know, and bubbles then could evolve into different shapes and sizes of balls. And it just goes on and on and on. I'm just looking to see where our next question was going and whether it links in with more of these
absolutely.
different props. We seem to have gone off at a tangent.
Well, it does actually, because it's about how can you help parents resource good home learning without spending too much money.
Absolutely. And how many of us, there may be some of you out there, and that's great, but how many of us in our settings have got loads of money? We don't. So I'm delighted because last term, my husband and I, we're beginning to develop some bespoke nursery, early years and special needs resources. And he actually got his head tuned in to what I'm talking about with all of this nutty stuff. And he did something lovely for me the other day. We have been reaching out. We have an elderly neighbour whose garden is a mess. So we've taken down a fence panel and we're actually working our way through the forest that is her garden. And my husband came into me all excited, a bit like a puppy dog. And excuse me, I'm going to get more resources from my stall behind here. And this is the empowering bit, because as far as I'm concerned, he is, and there never is, just a parent, but he's not a teacher. He doesn't have teacher training, but he's worked with me on this limitless learning approach. And he now, instead of saying to me, oh my goodness, all of that rubbish, it's like, oh, I found this. And he came to me and he'd been cutting down this tree and he brought me this. And he brought me this. And he said, this one's longer than this one. And I said, it is. And they're almost straight. So that's fantastic. We could use those to suggest measuring. And then he went back out. And I don't have these because I've stashed them away safely in my loft. He went back out and he found very similar diameters that were the same length. And he cut for me, and I asked him to cut them for 30 centimetres long. So now I have a stash of standard measuring sticks, which are 30 centimetres long, that children can use. So that is many of the same thing. Many of the same thing. I'm going to take a slight diversion here. Here we go. we bought some bulk orange juice, and rather than throwing away the bottles, we washed them and collected them and collected them. That's something that we can empower parents to do if they have got the space, but hopefully they can be creative to save many of the same thing. I've got some more. Everybody gets through these. Hopefully we've been able to buy them. Again, at school, some settings are tricky about whether we have to sterilise them, what we have to do with them. But lots and lots of toilet rolls. What could we do with one? You know, if you had one toilet roll, and I saw some fantastic stuff on Facebook. You can make little plant pots out of them. You can make characters out of them. We automatically think of the crafty stuff that we can do with them. But I'm going to come back to my list, my first checklist. So move and groove, yeah. I'm not going to cover that one here. We'll move on to the others, and you can think of the move and groove. Count and measure. Well, these are, I think they're a standard length. Yeah, they are a standard length. Yeah, how many toilet rolls long is my room? How many toilet rolls high? I have props everywhere in here. All my courses are based on props. And actually when Tracy and I had a conversation about slides or props or whatever, I said, props is the thing that I use best. So here we go. I'm going to angle you down just for a moment. How many toilet rolls high is my teddy? Well, I would have predicted 4. But actually, he's 3 on his sitting position. How many toilet rolls long is his leg? So that's using many of the same thing. I wonder if people can think what they might already have collections of, that they've got many of. Bottles for painting instead of paper. So to squirt, I guess. I've been collecting washing up bottles and squeezy bottles for children to be able to paint. Metal jar lids, fantastic, Antilla. I have got a huge collection of those. Oh, spoons out of the baby milk. I don't have access to that anymore, unfortunately, but you know, your parents at home with other children. Here we go, with your toilet rolls, build a structure to jump over. Buttons I'm going to come back to later as well. Let me make a note. Oh, I must watch the time because I'll get carried away. What time do we actually finish this broadcast, Tracy?
We're due to finish at 12:30 in the UK. That would be 3:30 in the United Arab Emirates. So we've got half an hour left at the moment, which is great. We knew we love spend lots of times on these practical ideas.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So
and just to say as well, I'll put all these ideas out in a, we'll collate them and share them as well when we send the certificates by email, because there's so much coming through and it's all great stuff. So thanks for everybody who's contributing.
That's fantastic, and it'd be lovely to get the ideas from everybody who's online as well. That's fantastic. So that's talking about many. In a moment, I'll come back to talk about a different aspect, but I've got a few more things that I start off with here. They may have many of one type of pebble in their garden. Then obviously this is where when we're in our setting we have to make sure that the cat hasn't been in it or whatever. But at home, parents either know that cats don't get into their garden, or maybe you don't have a garden and they're in your inside area. But lots of the same can make a real difference. And if you had, now I don't have lots of the same sock, which are just like this, but if this was a boring old black sock and I had lots of them, you can actually hang lots of the same sock on a washing line and then put different things in them and see which ones stretch the furthest. And you can do that with tights as well. Are there any more suggestions before I go on to the next part?
Lots for using natural resources,
Yes,
sticks, leaves, conkers, stones, that sort of thing. Yeah. We've covered lots of pebbles.
I am aware we've got quite a few people from the UAE as well, and I'm aware we need to have lots of lovely nature outdoor stuff. But that's the thing with home learning at the moment. I've found that I've had to be careful with my suggestions, that I don't suggest things that somebody who's stuck in a flat is going to be thinking, oh, right, well, that's all very well. Go out and get leaves or twigs or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I can't get that. Yeah. Oh, I like that one. Put a ball in a sock and then you can hit it with a bat. You can also hit your brother with it as well, which is also helpful. I think we're going to mention that later on. Shakers, nice music stuff coming in. Using pens and pencils as measuring sticks. Now, I'm probably going to give away one of my top tips here. I have encouraged parents, I've asked them, because as we said, I'm giving out more ideas while they're at home because I'm not able to do that organically. I've asked them to actually use a serrated knife and cut a pencil. And if you cut a pencil to 10 centimetres, then you can use that as a measuring stick. And I'm very keen on using standard measures, not plugging it, not making a big fuss, not using rulers as such that we get given. And after all, where have I put it? There's a little tiny. I have a grotty old meter stick because I am a teacher and I have collected. My garage is a disgrace. But not everybody's got one of those at home. But they may have a tape measure and they may be able to use their tape measure to make a stick. I used my broom handle and marked off on my broom handle with a bit of tape. How long is a metre?
Yeah.
So we've sort of got two things here. I have, for several years, run a course which, when the world becomes level again, I can bring to you. And I would love to bring to you. Please let me see people again. Come to your setting, look around, look at your areas or islands of continuous provision, and look at how we can use this. I sometimes call it a take one approach, because you start with one thing, and how we can actually integrate that into your setting and empower everybody to do it. So that's one aspect, and we can use some of those really good resources that we've got in our settings. But when we're helping parents for the next few weeks at least, and we may well have primary people here, all of this stuff works for older children too, and particularly for children with special needs. We have to think, well, they won't have a meter stick, but we would like them to know what a meter looks like. So how can we do that? How can we empower the parents to use something?
There's a good suggestion to use your stride to, as a measure for a meter, and I think we've been doing that actually. You know, it's generally a close enough measure of a meter. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's good. And you know, a lot of time we use hands and feet to measure as well. Yeah.
Can you just remind me then? You've mentioned move and groove. You mentioned counting and numbers. Was it?
There's more.
Was there more on your list?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So for the first set, it's move and groove, count and measure. The third one is listen and tell. Yeah. When I first wrote that, I put spell and tell, and I thought one thing I don't want to encourage parents to do is to strap a child to a pencil and force them to learn to spell words that until they've got their physicality in place, they're not able to. They're not developmentally ready for. Absolutely. If a child's ready for spelling, you'll know it, and the parents will be doing it with them. They're likely to be encouraging that. So it's not spell and tell, it's listen and tell. So could you tell a story about, I think the stone is probably a better one. Why is it a special stone? I'm putting that stone in the palm of my hand. The palm of my hand is warm. But as I put it in the palm of my hand gets warmer and warmer. My fingers start turning red, and a little bit of smoke begins to come from the tiny crack in the stone. What happens next? That just came from nowhere. Yeah? And once we relax and learn that there's no wrong, if I'd have given that to you, if I could hand that to you, you would have done something completely different with it. Every family will do something completely different with. But that telling stories, sharing stories, but listening to what your child is saying while they're playing. And maybe encouraging parents, if they are able to write or record or video. Oh, the videos I've had sent to me are just wonderful. It's so, I shall be pleased when I get to touch my children. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I will be allowed. I may have to do it at a distance. But the connection still is very strong. They're feeding back to me every day, and just seeing what they're doing with, those little suggestions. I plant the seed and then it grows. We make the garden. They grow and learn as suits them. Mm. Yeah, I've got a slide for that, which I can send through to you, Tracy, and you can add that to your pack when you send it out. It's a nice little poster.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the fact that the things that we place into their learning, we want them to learn the way that they want to. But if we know we're wanting to learn something particular, then we can plant something. Yeah? It's a bit like getting towards Christmas when you want your husband to buy you something particular for Christmas. You might just, drop a little seed and hopefully he takes it up and buys you the right thing.
So we've been asked a question, how can we tailor this particular idea for the needs of children of all ages?
Yeah.
Particularly younger children, babies, toddlers.
Okay. Yeah. Babies, toddlers will explore whatever we give them. Yeah, they're not going to go off at these tangents. And one of the exciting things for babies and toddlers is when they are at home, if they're working alongside their older siblings, then they will pick up on learning from them as well. Giving heuristic play, letting babies and toddlers have a basket of things that they can play with. And also we go off into the stories and rhymes, all of those really practical. If we had been counting 5 of something, then obviously you go off into the songs of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
You would link it with stories. Your child. And yeah, somebody's here saying, Amanda Kenrick is saying, encourage use of treasure baskets at home. I think it's really useful for parents to know that you don't have to have a set task for those children to do. And even the little ones, if you have got tiny ones, you have to watch they don't eat them too much. But if you have lots of something, lots of these, lots of sticks, they will feel them, they will touch them. You choose them carefully to make sure that they are appropriate, not a wood that's going to be damaging to them. We did many, but the other thing we can do is varied. So it's not many and varied, it's many or varied. So if we go back here, I started with this stone, and these live on my bathroom windowsill. That one's bigger. For a little child to be able to pick up different, oh my goodness, they won't be able to pick that one up. I mean, obviously supervision. But you have got the comparing. You will then be developing the language that this one's bigger than, this one's smaller than. You can mix them up and put them in different orders. More varied, we have got, again, I have my husband to thank for this, as well as my 30 centimetre long, nice and standard little sticks. He's made these for me. And, well, they're all sticks, but actually, if you're experimenting with them, if you're feeling them sensory, this one has got rougher bark on it. And look, It's thicker. If you try to roll it, will it roll? This one won't. So you could give the little children a ramp, just a tiny sloping table to see what rolls down it. You could give them, if we were back on the stones, you could give them, probably in an area with a nice protective sheet, you know what's coming next, bowl of water. What happens when you plop these in? Yeah? We plop them in. Do they make different sounds? Do they splash in different ways? There'll be lots of laughter going along with that one, as well as lots of wet children. But in my book, wet children are often very happy children. Has that answered the question, Tracy?
Yeah, I hope so. Yes, I think so. Thank you. We've got just a comment saying, you know, not all parents like to make videos. And it's an interesting one that leads on to a question we did discuss. And that is, you know, how do you work with parents who are harder to engage with, you know, who are more difficult to reach? Do you have any sort of tips for that? Because I mean, I think some people have said some parents are amazing and the things they come up with are so creative, and that's great when it's working well. What about when it's, you know, they are harder to reach and engage?
Yeah, it's about that connection. It's about reaching out, and it's about them trusting you. If I talk about when the world is back on a level playing field, a lovely setting that I've worked with in the past has a very underprivileged catchment area, particularly the parents of their 2-year-olds, and that, you know, that's certainly in England. If the 2-year-olds are in nursery, then there's a strong chance that there are some challenges and deprivation there. They invite the parents into school. They get them to come in and be a helper for a day, so that they get to see what's going on. And the other thing that is just incredible, not everybody will be able to manage this, is that they have bought an allotment for the parents. And that has been a huge breakthrough.
Wow.
Because the parents can go along with their children. They can go along, they can meet other parents, they're provided with the tools, the equipment, and they get to talk, they get to connect. And a member of staff will be there sometimes, an older member of the community, obviously everybody DBS checked, but, you know, will be there sometimes. And what we find with these hard to reach parents is that they've had a tough time. They've had challenges. School wasn't good for them. School wasn't a warm and friendly place. When they got home, they just wanted to shut down from it. And actually, we want the opposite. We want it to blossom like a flower. So a little song that I've given to the children that I've been working with is learn, grow, make and connect, learn, grow, make and connect, learn, grow and make and connect. What can we do today? And that's just so simple for parents to think, right, can I learn something new? What could I learn to do? Well, if we were on the orange, I could learn to throw and catch a ball. If I was older, I could learn to juggle. I could learn to roll a ball, to knock some skittles over. So just empowering them to be able to come up with the ideas and to give them feedback, however they reconnect with you. And I've actually found by phone is really useful. Just calling people and saying, you know, how's this going? How's it going for you? You did what? Oh, you made a cake with him. You know, what did you do? Did he do the stirring? Did you do the stirring? And we've got somebody playing devil's advocate and saying, after everything we offer and implement, and I can't see the end of it.
Some parents are simply not interested, and that isn't something we need to beat ourselves up about.
And I think that's fair.
Yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
Rachel.
So long as we're doing everything we can and we are reaching out as much as we can, and we get feedback that, you know, 95% of the parents aren't engaging, there's probably something deeper going on with that parent. And so long as we've got those social support systems in place, it's really, really important that, yeah, we don't beat ourselves up, but we also don't give up. We don't give up on those parents, because those parents are going to have to move through school with their children, and the chances are, if they're not connecting with their children, there's going to be some special needs later on. Do you have? We are very, very lucky that we've got an emotional learning support assistant, and I don't know what that looks like in your area, a homeschool link worker. It might be a health visitor for younger children. It might be a social worker. But if we embrace everybody in, then everybody knows that their voice is valid. In fact, I've not used that before. I'm going to make a note. Everyone knows that their voice is valid. Forgive me, but that is how I develop and grow things. Their voice is valid. And that takes me back to something from the behaviour courses, that when we get what some people see as reward, actually it's not a reward we want. It's not a sticker we want. It's not a sweetie we want. It's not a tap on the head and well done. It's actually being validated. We want to know that we are a valid member of that community and that we are valid in your eyes. And if you are the teacher and you let Kirsty, let's say, young mum Kirsty, oh my goodness, when I was a deputy head in a primary school a number of years ago, I had a little lad, and I care to bet that mum wouldn't have connected early on. And she certainly didn't want to connect with me when he was 6, 7 years old. And my, did she need to connect, because, you know, we had some challenges. But when I got to know what her story was, it was so sad. And she wouldn't reach out and trust anybody. She wouldn't trust anybody in authority. And we are seen as authority figures. That's where people in early years have that advantage, because we have that connection. I don't know if anybody in England has been watching the programme The A Word. It's about a little boy who has autism, and his key worker, Heather, I know it's an older child, but this is where early years and special needs in older children are just bedfellows. The key worker, Heather, is so well observed in this show, because she just has time for him, she connects with him, and does she connect with the parents? Now we're sort of going off home learning here, but actually this underpins it. Absolutely, it underpins everything. And if we don't have that connection, then they're not going to trust us, they're not going to listen to us, they're just going to do their own thing. And we want them to do things that we're supporting. And we support them as well. Sorry, you've got me on one of my pet subjects there.
We've got 10 minutes left, so we're going to come to our last question. But I am just going to give everybody a quick opportunity if there's anything they particularly want to ask now. And I'll keep an eye on the chat, see if there's anything I need to put to you before the end. But the last thing we wanted to address was, how can we help parents support English, early language and mathematical development specifically? So we have, a few moments to try and address that, Ali.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, the strategies that we're using will support that. What we need to do is empower ourselves in the key vocabulary. Now, I wear many hats, and one of them that I wear when the world is back on a level playing field is I train teachers. So I work with a SCIT, a school-based initial teacher training, and I'm delighted because they throw all the early years trainees at me, and we get to play fantastic games together. And the language development is key. That's one of the biggest gaps that we have for our children. Those people in England will know about cultural capital. Children at home might be struggling if they're not getting those opportunities. So when we start with, call it a catalyst, call it a seed, call it whatever, have a think about what you are wanting. What you are wanting. I'm thrown by this from Sian. What's the 4th and 5th things? The move and groove, count and measure, listen and tell, make and bake. Those are the first 4. And then the advanced 4 are care and share, near and far, now and then investigate and create.
We'll put out a list of those for everybody who didn't catch it. So
yeah, we will.
Yeah.
I'll put that out for you. But it's important to start parents simply, so that they know something that they can do, something that they can start with. And I suggested something sooner and I can't remember which bit it was. Never mind. Let's come back. I'm frustrated that I can't remember that. I'll come back to that.
Not worry.
If we were saying to a parent, start with a sock, we're not just choosing it randomly. We are choosing carefully because we are the professionals. And we know that there's certain language that we want our children to learn. There are certain mathematical things here. So this sock, what mathematical language would we be encouraging here? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? So if we do socks, we can encourage them to have stripy socks, dotty socks. I can see your top. You put it on specially for me there, Tracy. I often do that. I was wearing a spotty top when we were doing circles. And a child. Again, not everybody sends videos, but I got a photograph back of a child who was wearing the complete outfit that went with what we were doing. The language is key. So we can support the language by helping them to question too. Oh, talking about patterns, says Marie Priscilla. Yeah. Sorry, I am so easily distracted by the words that are coming up on the screen. There we go. I'm one of those children who's like, oh, I want to be into this, into that. Perhaps I've got ADHD, who knows? The language. We talked about, certainly with varied. Yeah, if you've got the varied things, yeah, greater than, less than, bigger than, heavier than. And actually, when you look at language development, a lot of our language that we want our children to learn is about mathematical and scientific vocabulary. The other one that's key is emotional vocabulary. That's a completely different bag. But the vocabulary, if you're baking with a child, stir, what does stir mean? It's a scientific term. Weighing, and absolutely linking to the characteristics of effective learning, that makes such a difference. What questions can they ask? I think we've mentioned, how many of them will? So you're predicting, looking at just the whole range of language there. Yeah. I am so distracted. The feedback. So distracted
we're moving towards the end as well, so people will start to say their thanks in a minute. So
that's fine. I do want to share though. We missed out one section, which is about multi-age learning.
Yeah.
And I'd like to close with a couple of little stories that I have seen over recent times. And when I've worked with families and how they've connected with grandparents, either in real life or in online. There we go. And there we go.
Somebody says you're exactly like my students, easily moved here and there.
Yeah. Here we go. Right. From the orange, we moved on to circles, and that led us on to buttons. I have my granny's button tin, and I saw a child who was on Skype or Zoom or whatever with little brother, who was about 2, engaging with a grandmother, and the grandmother was showing the child the button tin. And the other thing was a practical thing. Again, I think we'd started with a ball that time, but we moved on, being very careful with the children. Nice and noisy. Yeah. Imagine the tangents you could go off with music and so forth here. But a granddad came in and shared his precious marble collection and said why that was his favourite one and what he used to play. So that takes us on to some of the higher level questions, which is now and then. What can you do with this now, but what did people do with it in the past? So we're covering all of the early learning goals. We're covering all of the characteristics of effective learning. Now, this morning, we have just skimmed the surface. I'm amazed at actually how much we have covered in this time. But when the world is back on an even keel, I do a whole day workshop called the Early Years Exploration Station. And that helps you to start with one thing, but they're very carefully chosen, and they will help you to develop that within your own setting, but also to reach out to parents from that. And on the back of this, the other thing that I'm offering is I'm going to put out some dates for some hour-and-a-half workshops for limitless learning, and just half a dozen people on it to start with. And I will do a workshop with people online, and we can talk about what you want to start with, where you want to go, a real practical interactive. And I will get my dates sorted out for that and make sure that Tracy can have those to send out to you tomorrow.
That sounds great, because we're getting lots of lovely feedback as well from you, so from everybody. So yes, requests for part 2 of this webinar are coming in, Ali, so which is wonderful news.
I think
so we will look at
that. That part 2 is likely to be, how does it work for you? So, you know, join me on one of those limitless learning workshops, and it won't be, you know, there are no PowerPoints here. We can send you a few little bits that are going to work, and the blog that goes with it will be very useful.
Absolutely.
It's all about, how do we start with something that you're starting with? How will it work for you in your setting, wherever in the world you are?
Well, that's wonderful. I can't think of a better way to end than that, actually, Ali. I think that's been really lovely. The comments are coming through, just, you know, everybody was captivated, great session, passionate, lovely. So thank you from everybody, and thank you for us for running such a really informative, inspiring session. I think we've had some great ideas and insights, and we're all very appreciative, so that's fantastic.
And thank you for coming. And I hope things go really well for you over the next few weeks and months. Yeah.
Yes.